All right. So we were doing a little jamming on I Got Rhythm, which is public domain now, by Gershwin, of course. And we were discussing that a little bit. There's a few discrepancies. And if you listen to a bunch of different versions, which you really got to do, it varies, that fifth bar of the head, the fifth bar of the A section.
It varies right after, I'd say, bar one. There's variations that could.
And we were also talking about Gershwin. You know, it's not necessarily because he was more classical, you know, to begin with. I know I've done Summertime. I was doing Summertime on a gig, and a really great piano player. It was a show. We were doing shows up and down the Cape, and he was like, "You want to hear the way George wrote it?" It sounded nothing like the swing version we all played.
Yeah. He probably did some very out there reharmonizations. If you see the YouTube thing of the solo piano, he's all over the place.
Yeah, it's amazing. Some of those guys were, you know, up there with Mozart. Those guys. I know people think of Mozart as being a musical genius, but you know, some of those, you know, Gershwin for one, and you know, I love like Cole Porter's writing. He probably wrote thousands of songs. You know,
He could hardly play piano.
Yeah,
Or hardly sing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'd like to see footage of him to see how he approaches tunes, because I've gotten used to so many of them reharmonized by jazz musicians over the years. He was sophisticated, though, but I still wonder how it translated to his piano style. And I think Hoagie Carmichael, he was probably just hacking it out.
yeah. Oh, and I meant to introduce Michael Greenstein. He's been on the show before. We did, I forget what we did the last time.
Indiana and blues.
Yeah. So if you look at some of the past episodes, you can see some of his remarkable trumpet playing. I'm not sure. We're both living in Fitchburg now, but we got to talking one day. I'd see you walking with your trumpet. Like you go to Boston a lot, right? Yeah. To street perform mostly, right? Mm-hmm. Which sometimes people think of that as not such a good gig, but you know, street performers can do all right. You know, I know some of the Harvard Square people. They make a good living at it. You know,
some can, especially if they're not doing jazz. But then again, I find that the people that are into jazz are very generous and tuned into it.
That's true, and I play a lot of restaurant gigs. Not some people like, you know, I'll play something like we'll take five or something. There, you know, you can tell if somebody's really into jazz what they respond to.
Everybody wants Take Five.
Yeah,
and it's one of the hardest ones.
It's not. I used to think that, and you know, even when we used to do our jazz jam, you would see a lot of what I thought of as good players. They would sit down, you know, on that one.
Because if you haven't gotten the melody under your fingers, the bridge you'll definitely eat dirt if you're not prepared for it. And then also, Brubeck and his band, they never even soloed over the bridge, which is, I think they would have found it too busy.
And most people, when we would do it up there, they we just stay on we would just stay on that part for the solo section. But it gets a little old, you know, if you have like 3 or 4 horn players, and you know, if you're a rhythm guitarist.
Yeah, that's not
like there's not only so much you can do with those 2 chords.
If you call Take Five at a hip jazz jam, you're done for.
Yeah.
Yeah, no hip jazz musician wants to deal with that song. They might respect it for all that it is, but there's also another funny story. Alan Dawson from Lexington, Mass. He was doing his solo, and he was singing the ba-da-ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, and he was singing it in a different key. Brubeck heard that, and so when they came back in, they played it in the key he was singing it in, which was just a cute little jazz insider joke.
Yeah, I used to do it like an A minor, so I'd have those open strings and stuff. Yeah. So, but you know, it works pretty good. Like I play it as written, but
people tune down too. I think George Benson did a lot of tuning down to E flat.
Yeah, a lot of guitar players. I mean, Hendrix, of course, did, but I think maybe Hendrix kind of started it because when he was in younger days, he was playing with horn players. Those R&B band. He was with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Isley
definitely.
Brothers, a
Yeah.
couple of those, that had horns and stuff.
You want to
So
nail that low E, and
yeah, yeah. So it's kind of E flat's not that friendly for guitar players. I mean, it is once you learn the neck, better.
Yeah.
It's a good key, but not if you're used to. If
Yeah,
you're
and
used to doing stuff like that.
if you want to be the only accompanist too,
Yeah.
it's hard giving up that low.
Yeah,
low
yeah,
range.
that's true.
Horn players, definitely the best thing they ever do is act like you're going to have to play an E and A and D and G, and then hope you never have to. But that's what I've been working on. If I can play something well in F, I should be able to do it in F sharp.
Well, that's I think the different. At a jazz jam, you'll find a lot of tunes E flat, B flat. If you go to a blues jam, you're going to see a lot of
Yeah.
E, A, and G because they're
And then you don't probably even need the bebop licks. They're going to want the yakety sax blues stuff, which if you haven't had worked that out in A and E, you probably won't be doing a lot of blues gigs. But...
Yeah, I do it in G though. The yakety.
So Sonny Stitt would call Cherokee and then last second go in B.
Yeah.
And then obviously most of the sax players would get all nervous, but it makes the bridge easier. So.
Okay, yeah, I can't remember, but it's not to me. I know horn players they hear Cherokee, and it's like a rite of passage or something.
Because
to play
Charlie
it.
Parker, what he did in 1941, I think,
Yeah.
42, with the guitar player backing him, just kind of like, by the way, here's bebop. This is what you're all going to be chasing now. And it's a little old fashioned for him. He quotes the sailor's hornpipe, which I practiced that in all 12 keys.
Yeah.
Which is easily mixed up with Popeye, which is another good practice. But yeah.
Or we were talking about the Flintstones too. For the I Got Rhythm,
Yeah.
that was.
So that was probably written in the early 50s. So that was right in the height of bop. Like, that's probably there's a Dizzy Gillespie character in the Flintstones. I forget, Hot Lip something or other.
Oh yeah. I would have to watch that.
And then they had that mod band too that was like, they look like the Ramones, but they're meant to be the Beatles, I think. It's funny. I love the Flintstones.
That's cool.
But so Charlie Parker, he's from Kansas City. He had his teacher Buster Smith, who was the original double time player, which eventually Bird was known for his double time 16th note flurries. But I guess before he fully formed it, he was playing in Kansas City, and Joe Jones took his cymbal off the drum kit and threw it right in front of him, crashed on the floor, and then basically told him to go home and practice, which he then, the term woodshed, he went to the woodshed, and I think he said for a few years, he says in an interview with Paul Desmond, he practiced like 11 to 14 hours a day for a few years.
Yeah, and if you read, and I try to encourage my students, it's always difficult to get people to practice more. But that's the way to get better, I mean, anybody that's good,
Yeah.
I've read stuff about Coltrane, and he would never take his horn out of his
Oh,
mouth.
he'd fall asleep in the kitchen with it in his mouth, yeah.
And same with Hendrix with his guitar. You don't see a lot of pictures of Hendrix without a guitar.
No one ever told Hendrix, go practice.
No, yeah, you don't see pictures of him at the beach or nothing.
Yeah, Freddie Hubbard said early on, he said, this is going to be my pleasure.
Yeah,
And so he buckled down, and then he luckily met Wes Montgomery and his brothers, and it was just so much playing. He moved to New York, and he was terrified. He was from Indiana. And then he was practicing with Coltrane, and even more terrified, trying to do these, intervallic sax-like type lifts, and it created what we know as the baddest trumpet player ever.
yeah, and I think that for me and probably you too, when I was at Berkeley, if nothing else, you're around people who are serious about it.
Yeah.
If your roommate's doing 6-7 hours a day, you don't. Yeah, and you're only doing 2 or 3. So.
And 2 or 3 is not bad too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm lucky to get in that now. Fortunately, now I have gigs that and I can rationalize and say, but it is different, performing in
OJT,
practice.
on the job training. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose, but it's not like I can work out new tunes too much. I can.
Yeah.
Last night was a slow night, so I was kind of throwing it and trying some that I haven't done in a while.
Yeah.
But it does take the woodshedding for sure, and to get something out of what you're practicing. I try to. I don't know why it came to me. For me, it works, and I tell my students. I've played weddings and stuff, and there's something they always tell the brides to bring: something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. So that's the way I always relate everything to my music. Play some old stuff, play some new stuff that you haven't played before. Borrowed is transcribing. And for me, I always like to play some blues because it forces me to improvise, to just play over something that, I'm forced to, the spontaneity of, improvisation, nothing written out,
That's what I love about Joe Pass playing solo, is that he sounded almost like a guy noodling,
Yeah.
but he really dug into the blues. But he had ways of being pianistic, like his Art Tatum approach on the guitar, where he's filling it up with chords. But he managed to make solo guitar. When I think of the art of solo guitar, he's one of the first people that come to mind.
Yeah, and speaking of practice, his father made him practice from the time he was like 6, right?
Oh, I didn't know. I heard he learned in jail.
No, that was much later on.
Yeah.
He was in treatment like much later. That was after he had already played with everybody in the world,
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
but his first album is like in the '60s. Like it's kind of late. He was probably though with Oscar Peterson before that. Yeah.
His father made him. I guess he showed talent. He would come home from school, practice. His father would make him practice.
Dad didn't make him learn theory though, because in the instructional video he goes, "I was told this is an F9."
Yeah.
So what do you mean you were told?
Yeah, I used to take some classes. Maybe I'll get him on the show when I was at Berkeley with Ronnie Earl, and he plays his more jazzy blues and stuff.
I knew Ronnie. Yeah.
But he's like, no, these are kind of your organ sounded chords. I was like,
yeah, like he probably more Kenny Burrell kind of out of that Grant.
Yeah, he
Kenny
did
Burrell.
play some of that. And I know he was good friends with Stevie Ray and those guys. But to me, I guess in the '90s when I was at Berkeley, I would go to blues jams around Boston, and there'd be tons of Stevie Ray clones, and I started listening to some Ronnie, and then I found out he was doing some classes at Berkeley.
He had like the spiritual Coltrane kind of vibe too. There's something about
he,
Ronnie that
he covered
you can't place.
Equinox.
Yeah.
And I would ask him, what all you listen to? He said, well, I listen to Coltrane, and he was really into that.
In ways like a Carlos Santana, like totally into the jazz guys, but when he'd play, it wouldn't be like the jazz guys.
Yeah, he knows Carlos and those guys.
But if you put rhythm changes in front of either of those guys,
they don't know.
I don't think they know.
And vice versa. I've been with like diehard jazz players.
True.
And you call off a 1-4-5.
And then they try to force jazz. I went through that back in the day on piano at blues jams. I'd be like, I want to play jazz changes, and I'd try to force, and I'd realize they're not hearing those changes, so you got to get with what's happening.
Yeah, that's true. And, I know like something like, say, Blues for Alice. Yeah, it's a 12-bar blues, but if you try to do that at a blues jam...
Yeah. I was just...
or even like Straight No Chasers, a 12-bar blues.
But you can get away with doing like a 1-4-5 for... So my favorite music podcaster in the world is not Rick Beato, who I appreciate, but Andy Edwards.
I haven't watched him. I should watch some podcasts and something.
Andy is amazing.
I like this guy, Jasko Stefan. I think he's maybe German. He's a Django guy, but I actually met him at the Django in June, but he's one of the more predominant jazz.
Oh, is it the guy that was... that Rick interviewed recently?
Yeah,
he's incredible. Yeah, he goes way beyond Django.
And he's really laid back. A super nice guy,
Oh my God.
They go to the thing in Amherst, super.
His dad and him studied I don't want to say gypsy style because it's 2026. The what do they call it? Hot club.
Mm-hmm. Hot Club of France.
But there's another term other than hot club. gypsy swing. But okay, so but I'm getting derailed. So that Andy Edwards, he does a podcast about the connection between Jimmy Page and John McLaughlin and the whole blues jazz scene happening before Cream even started, that had Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce playing jazz, and then John McLaughlin being Jimmy Page's teacher. And just how John was the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
And then many years later, John's recording in a studio with Dennis Chambers and Joey DeFrancesco, and Jimmy Page was there. And Jimmy hugs John McLaughlin. He was just so grateful because, you know, Zeppelin wouldn't be Zeppelin without John McLaughlin. No one really thinks that.
And Page too. I mean, most people think of him as like a sloppy blues player or whatever, but he was a session player way before. You know, when he was really young.
And John would help him because he couldn't read that well. And
that there's a Donovan. You know, like Sunshine Superman. That's Jimmy Page's guitar playing on that.
John got the Burt Bacharach stuff, which was very composed and very difficult. Jimmy got the Kinks and the which he still sounded good. I mean, because John couldn't do the Chuck Berry stuff, and Jimmy could. So they were like, all you needed were those two guys.
Yeah.
And there's a guy, Gordon Beck, I guess, might be credited to one of the first fusion albums.
I'm not sure. You know, that's some cool stuff out there, though. So do some listening. And as far as if you're an aspiring jazz player, you're not. This one that we did, I Got Rhythm, that's important because a lot of times jazz players will say, "Oh, it's just rhythm changes." That's kind of what they're talking about. There's variations, as we talked about.
Contrafact, where a different melody is written over a change, because you can't copyright changes.
Yeah, that's it. I read one time that's the second most common chord progression in, I guess, pop or blues or jazz, because the most common is the 1-4-5. You know, the standard or early rock and roll was mostly just the 1-4-5.
And somewhere that got replaced by Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye. Those changes show up in a million pop songs.
Yeah, and then the 1-6-2-5 in general, which is the beginning of I Got Rhythm, you know, do, la.
Yeah.
But, you know, you hear like...
Oh, the whole.
You know, that's
from
still,
doo-wop on down to
there's been tons of songs. Earth Angel comes to mind.
R&B,
that was a 1-6-2.
Surf music.
Yeah.
That now, when you hear those kinds of changes in pop music, which is rare, it really sticks out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a reason, I think, why stuff kind of sticks around. You know, because even if you analyze Bach and stuff, they were playing 1 to 4 to 5 to 6. You know, they're still doing the same kind of changes. You know, it's because it sounds good.
Especially Bach, when he played minor, that was a lot like that kind of melodic minor hard bop thing. Bud Powell does Bud on Bach, where he plays. I forget what the invention is. He starts off with the Bach, and then he goes into a blue note version of it, and it really shows the. Bach was a bopper. He just was too soon.
Yeah, and they were. I guess maybe they weren't allowed to do certain things back then. You know,
he broke all the rules too. With his
he did some,
and,
but you know, I mean, I despised trad harmony when all those rules. You know, like,
I don't think Bach ever sat on a sharp 11.
Yeah,
like Monk.
No, and
that's what makes anybody who thinks like Monk is like somewhat behind or whatever. I mean, yes, he chose to be less virtuosic, but the architecture of his tunes is bafflingly gorgeous, beautifully unique. Anything you want to say about it. And he only had about 60 tunes he wrote before 1950. I was just actually today, I was warming up Boulevard Blues B. I can't even say his names of his tunes are complicated, but so there's always something you can connect to, but then there's this weirdness. And, you know, his weird use of whole tone. And people spent their whole career, like Steve Lacy was known as, like, digging into Monk's music. And it's just so... It's great whenever I feel a little lost. It's like, well, what Monk tune haven't I been working on? And his ballads are so gorgeous.
They are, yeah. I love that. You know, well, Around Midnight's a Monk tune, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, too bad it's not public domain, or we'd do it here.
We could call it... Near 11 and just steal the changes.
11:59.
That's a tune that almost hints at future R&B in the way that it moves. and it's got a lot of 2/5s in it.
Yeah, there's some great Monk tunes, and it's kind of like he made it work. It's not something you would, if you were just writing something according to the rules, that you've been taught. Monk was breaking that. All the
And he came out of,
chromatic
you hear his earliest stuff with Coleman Hawkins. He's actually playing quite fluid, and he definitely knew how to play inside. I think Bud Powell. So he wrote all his tunes for Bud Powell, is what he said.
So in what Bud? That's about Bud Powell.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's really, that's Blue Skies.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess if it's the same changes.
A little altered because that's Monk. Yeah.
I think Blue Skies is public domain.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Blue Sky.
Yeah, I love it.
Da.
Irving Berlin, he could only play in one key and had a capo for his piano to play all white keys, I guess, or whatever. But he's probably, emotionally speaking, he's my favorite of those composers.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, from the song "God Bless America" to "Blue Skies" to "What'll I Do," like it's a Russian lullaby, heartbreakingly beautiful. He almost hints at the indie pop music of like now, Always. Billy Corgan in some movie Spun does a solo guitar and voice version of "Always," and that just hit me like a ton of bricks because there's something that Gershwin and Cole Porter, it doesn't touch me like certain indie folk music, but Irving Berlin had it, and he was also like always like starting to like fall out of, because he was like the Britney Spears of his time, and he would then fall out of favor, but then he would come back with a new show, and he kept like, there's a documentary about him. He was like this fighter who just kept coming back and kept getting the gold, and it was just, I just love that guy.
Yeah, that's a good tune. I guess I'm almost positive it's public domain if we want to play that.
Oh, it's got to be by now.
Do you have it memorized?
Yeah, what key do you want to do it in?
I have it in A minor.
I thought you were going to say that. That's fine.
You don't like A minor?
I like all keys. That's what I have to tell me. I practice in 12 keys all the time for this moment.
What's in what Bud in?
F minor. You can do either. I'm not worth the silver plating on this trumpet if I can't do it in A minor.
Yeah, that's what, D for you or
no,
or
it's A. My A is your A.
B minor for you.
The trumpet players call it one note higher. I don't know why.
Yeah. D, B minor, and I'm seeing.
Yeah, I can do it. I'll probably like it in A minor.
Yeah. About how fast?
1, 2, 1, 2.
Go ahead, take a solo. Normally we would come back and play the head out, but I saw we were getting low on time. That's a good tune.
He's the king of 4 minor.
We could talk about that one more because it's pretty much just a minor with that descending bass line, which I was trying to do the bass part and the guitar.
And he goes to the relative major for the bridge.
Yeah, and then so you do that walking down for 4 bar. That's a 4 bar thing on the A minor. Then just a 1-6-2-5. Our old friend, the 1-6-2-5.
So what makes it so cool is, so in the bridge he goes to the relative major, but he hits that C minor, and so that's taking it. So it's not fully diatonic to C and A minor by doing that C minor. You know, it's like borrowing from. What would you consider that? Borrowing from. What has a C minor in it? F. No, not F.
E flat.
E flat is C minor. So it's borrowing from the relative key of E flat major. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I try not to think too much about it. If I'm playing, because it kind of, I think maybe use my ear, try to use my ear as much too, because I think if you analyze it too, it's good to know all this stuff.
It's good for Monday morning quarterback. Like don't do it on the bandstand.
Yeah.
But it's nice. It's just like I was just thinking about that now. How it's neat. What makes that C minor so beautiful is because you get so used to it being in the C A minor world, and he dips into that E flat just for a little sparkle. And he does that in a lot of tunes. Russian Lullaby.
Yeah. That's cool about that. We're down to about a minute and a half.
Wow.
Time's fun when you're having flies, huh?
I can see why people have 3-hour podcasts. They like listening to themselves talk about things they like.
Yeah, it flies by, especially playing. But Michael Greenstein, look for him in the spotlight. Or on the streets of Boston.
You can find me shopping in Market Basket and in the sauna at the YMCA.
Where do you have a certain spot you're at in Boston?
When it gets warm enough, I am on Washington Street in downtown Crossing at the corner of South Street and Washington Street, doing my thing. And when it's too cold, I'm in Porter Square Station by the escalators.
So listen for that trumpet. Michael Greenstein. And thanks so much for coming on. Thanks, everybody, for watching the podcast. We're not actually live, so this will be up in a day or two.
We're not actually. Oh, I didn't know. I thought we were live.
Nah.
Is it extra work to make it go live?
Maybe I could figure it out.
Maybe fun.
But yeah,
Collins.
if I could have comments. So anyway, feel free to comment. I'll try to answer them on the YouTube, or you can watch also on jazzchat.org. Or thanks to FATV, thanks for all the equipment, all the help with these podcasts.
Please like and subscribe. Hit the bell button, whatever.
All right, we're over. Thanks.